And maybe I'll be right this time. Is that a lot to ask? And it's not hard to figure out exactly where I've been. I think I'm wasted my chance to realize that you're perfect as I can't recognize. What did you see?
Good evening, Fredonia. You're listening to the Local Lowdown on WCVF 88.9 The Voice and WDVL 89.5 The Inferno. I'm Elena, your co-host and field interview lead.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jordan. I'm your other co-host. I'm also the A&R lead and the executive producer.
Hey, it's Sebastian, your technical director, now with salmon hair. Hopefully it'll be
Brand
red.
We
cut
love it.
Just dropped.
Yeah, brand new cut. Hopefully it'll be red next time. This is not.
Ooh.
Oh.
I didn't even know that was coming.
No, this was an accident.
Wow. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to see how it develops. And tonight's show is brought to you by Fredonia Radio Systems in a group effort to promote and showcase the local music scene right here in Fredonia, but also Western New York at large. Welcome to the Local Lowdown.
On this week's episode, we are welcoming our guest for the week, Jay Zubricky of Buffalo's GCR Audio. Welcome on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. A little different than usual, but this
Yeah.
is super exciting.
It could be a performance on the base of this mic stand.
Hey, you never know. Never know.
Gotta ease up on the house rules for me.
Well, to start off, we still would love for you to introduce yourself and what you do within music.
I'm Jay Zubricky. I am an audio engineer and producer at GCR Audio in Buffalo. And I've been there for a little over 15 years. And I've been recording bands for almost 20.
Wow.
And that's been pretty much what I do in the music world. Still just love being part of the community, so go to a lot of shows and take part in a lot of events. But when it comes down to like my role in it, I'm just helping bands make records and been doing that for a few years now.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've been involved with music for a very long time.
Yep.
What are some of your earliest memories with music, and how did your relationship with music develop over time?
Earliest would just be being a kid and hearing like the soundtracks and skate videos. Mm-hmm. And it was the punk stuff that stood out to me. And it felt like a pretty like natural community to get involved with. And I don't know, just really accepting community, and it just spoke to me. So I started really getting into that stuff at a very young age. Mm-hmm. And it was like, you know, Green Day, maybe like the Dookie album came out, and I was like, okay, I want to play guitar now.
Yeah.
So just like a lot of people, I started off playing guitar.
Awesome.
And did that for a lot of years and played in some local bands. And when I was like, probably senior in high school, I started getting into the technical side. And that was like my introduction to what was actually Pro Tools. It was actually my high school taught some Pro Tools classes. So
That's awesome.
Lucky.
yeah,
it's really
it was
cool.
cool. Like my junior year, they opened up a Center for the Arts, and it had a studio
wow.
in it. So that was when I started going from like, okay, I just want to play guitar, to like, okay, there's something else here that interests me. I got to figure it out. And they ended up letting me start working there right after I graduated. So gave me some access to a studio. And that was kind of when I took the step kind of away from being in a band and a step towards like working with bands and trying to figure out what this next role was going to be, which ended up becoming an audio engineer.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was there any projects that you worked on at that time in high school that you feel had like a significant meaning to your career and how you would go about and do things in the future?
Yeah, actually, there was a Fredonia band called League.
Oh, awesome.
They were, if you haven't listened to them, they're
Haven't heard 'em
awesome.
yet,
They were
yeah.
legends around here. And Steve Ressner, the drummer, is actually running the University of Rochester recording program now. But
Oh, wow.
they were a band that was like maybe one of the first like 3 or 4 bands I ever recorded.
Yeah.
And of course, we did like an album, a full album. I didn't know what
Yeah.
I was doing. So
go
that
for
was
it.
like, it felt like a real chance to do something. And like, little did I know, I had not paid any dues. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but we were just buddies from playing shows and actually playing a lot of shows on this campus together.
Wow.
And we went in and made an album, and it was kind of like, okay, if it's this cool and I don't know what I'm doing, if I start to learn about this stuff and learn about why this doesn't sound great and how to make it better, you know, it was like inspirational to try to actually plant my feet into something and work at it. So them, and there's another band called Misconstruity,
Okay.
which is, they're kind of like, they're not like active as far as playing, but they're still doing music, and we're actually doing an album right now. So they were like
Great.
the actual first band I ever recorded, and it's like 20 years later, and we're doing another record. So
Was
those
that
were probably the
also
first two.
at your high school?
Yeah,
as
that was
well?
at the high school studio.
Okay.
Yeah, both those bands. And it was funny bringing the Fredonia guys through there. Like, they actually had a real studio here, so they knew a lot more than I did.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like I had a set of keys. And we were buddies, and we all like kind of understood the style we were going for. And it was kind of like okay to make some mistakes together and learn from it. And yeah, they put out the record and did a lot of touring. But yeah, so those two projects were the ones that maybe gave me a little bit of hope to want to continue on and like try to actually do this and learn about it.
Yeah, wow. I was going to ask in the middle of that if you still had any ties from those earlier projects,
Yeah.
but that's super awesome that
Yeah,
you
there's
do
still a
and that
few.
it still works.
Yeah, there's still
Wow,
a few
yeah.
from the very, very, very beginning. And yeah, Steve actually had me do a master class at U of R last year. And that was one of the topics, was that first record and how we both have gotten better since then. So
Right.
Yeah. Well, I just want to rewind it real quick here before we get too deep into your career. We got this photo of you here, which you should be familiar with. It's not like
I
you
am.
haven't
This
seen
is
it
the
before.
Yeah.
the first show I ever played. I was 12.
Yes, you were
Wow.
12.
I was 12
at a middle
and
school dance.
A middle school dance.
From what we hear, there was
I-
a lot of Nirvana.
Oh, yeah.
Smashing Pumpkins.
Tons.
Green Day.
Yes.
And a whole lot of awkwardness.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I went to a Catholic school, and the rules were pretty strict. And the whole thing was like, I wanted to have blue hair. So my mom took me to, I don't even know what store. It might have been like a Party City kind of place, and gave me some Russian blue stuff. My hair was basically a helmet in that photo.
Maybe we'll see that for Sebastian.
Yeah.
soon.
Yes.
It was like a rock. And yeah, it's just because I had to wash out by Monday morning. But yeah, that was my first show I ever played.
With the whole shirt.
Whole
Yeah.
T-shirt
Yep.
on Squire Stratocaster, and I think a borrowed amp. So, but yeah, it was Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins. We played some whole songs. Yeah, that's a pretty important moment too.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks for digging that one out.
Had to
Yeah,
pull
of
that one
course.
out. It was
Of
too good of a
course.
photo.
Yeah.
The caption was too perfect.
It comes out every now and again. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's my best friend Dave on drums, my older brother Eric on another guitar. So like it comes out every now and again, but it's a good reminder of just kind of like what that first step really was, and without that I wouldn't be doing this. Like
Yep.
so.
I always run it back on the joke in almost any band. There's always brothers.
Yes.
So
There's
many
always
brothers.
a brother there.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah,
funny.
somewhere
Siblings.
along the way there's brothers or some sort of like family connection, and actually I work with a band that's two sets of brothers.
Really?
All Fredonia guys, Pilot Field.
Yes.
Oh,
I was
yes.
gonna
Yeah,
guess
it's two
that.
sets of
Okay.
brothers. So yeah, it still holds
Yeah.
true.
Crazy.
I did also want to ask, just to touch again on your earlier years, did you have any field professionals that you were inspired by even at that time or just even a little later on?
Yeah, so coming out of high school, actually in high school, the teacher was this guy, Paul Fitzgibbons, and he is he had a studio called Redline Audio, but he was also doing like equipment sales, installations and stuff, and he was doing the teaching gig at Bishop Timon, and we hit it off because he liked punk, and he, you know, I don't even know how old he is. At the time, you could tell me whatever, I would have believed you, but like,
Yeah.
he's probably like 12, 13 years older than me, so he was like young enough to be cool about everything. And so I did a lot of learning from him, and he actually got me my first real studio experience, which was Audio Magic, where I don't think Mike Rourke still teaches here.
I haven't heard
I
that
don't
name.
remember the name.
Okay, he was teaching here for a while, but he was the chief engineer there.
Okay.
And he was one who was extremely patient with me. I had no idea what I was doing, and he was like so cool to take me under his wing and just let me make a lot of mistakes and learn from them. But those were like the two at the very beginning that were willing to let me just be a part of what they were doing. And it started off as like fly on the wall and cleaning up and making coffee and walking the dogs. Eventually turned into being able to plug in mics and set up stands. But without those two guys, I 100% would be in an office job or
Yes.
something. I don't know what I was going to make something up, I wouldn't be doing audio.
No.
So I'm very grateful for those two.
Absolutely. I myself, I'm very inspired by my own teacher back from high school, even to this day. So it's really great to see that.
Yeah, when you meet those people
ways.
and you make that special connection and you really take that opportunity for everything it has to give you, you could learn so much. And again, he had my back for so many years, and like I said, he got me into my first real studio where I was able to cut my teeth. So yeah, but him and Mike, definitely at the beginning.
Now bringing it forward, you are celebrating your 15th anniversary of working at GCR Audio.
Yep.
What has it been like working there, and what are some of your earliest memories getting there?
Without sounding too dramatic, it's actually been life-changing. Because going into it, I was actually going to tap out of trying to be an audio engineer.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So,
So you were at Magic first and then...
Yeah, and again, just part of like doing or being an audio engineer, and you're kind of coming up and you're trying to establish yourself in like the Buffalo market. It's tough because the scene is only so big.
Exactly.
So when it's probably 2008, maybe in the summer, the old GCR manager reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to come check out the studio? We did this renovation and beautiful." And I said no at first because I was so loyal to where I was working.
Yeah.
And as the next few months went on, I'm realizing like, hey, I had like one session last month, and like before that I had two, and I graduated college and real life started to kind of creep up. Yeah. So you get those thoughts like, what do I do? What's next? And I was, kind of content. I had fun doing the engineering and met some great people, and just kind of felt like maybe it wasn't working because I wasn't able to do it full time. So they reached out again around the holidays and said, "Hey, like the Goo Goo Dolls are taking off for the next like month for family stuff. Do you want to come take a look?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come take a look." And I walked in, and I'd never been in a place like that. And we sat down and talked for a few hours, and they just said, "Hey, we want to make this available to you if you want to work out of here." And I didn't tell them I didn't know. There was nothing in that room that I'd used before. I'd used compressors, but I hadn't used any of the ones that they had. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'll come hang around a little bit. So that January of 2009 is when I started hanging around there and sitting in on sessions and just learning the room. And shortly after that, I started bringing bands in. And so it literally, like, when I say life-changing, I really mean it, because if they didn't call me back and said, "Hey, you want to come in? We're going to offer one more time here," that would have just left it at like, "Hey, no, I'm cool with working where I'm working, and I'm going to move on to the next phase of my life." So, yeah, life-changing because it's given me an opportunity to make a career out of it and meet a ton of people that like are super good friends and been a part of like some really awesome projects, and
absolutely,
like leave my mark somewhere in the scene too.
Right.
Which has been great, and it's been more than I could ask for.
Yeah.
And like early memories, I mean, the early years was just kind of like trying to figure it out. Like, I didn't know, again, I was kind of starting over a little bit because I didn't know anything there. And I was just trying to work through it as quickly as I could, but I really wanted to soak it in and try to become like a real engineer. So, yeah, the early memories are just kind of spending every minute there. Like, if I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't like working not so great part-time job that I could just quit, if like a good session came up, I was there, and I was just learning everything. And there's a certain amount of peace that brought, and just the sense of accomplishment, just trying to be like, oh, I didn't know this last week, but now I know it, and it's making my recording sound better. So there were some pretty big steps taken there, and yeah, just thinking back to the early days, that's what I remember from it.
Yeah. Well, I can say, and I mentioned it right before the start of this interview, but just from the interviews that I've been a part of, I hear a shout out for you very frequently, and you can really see the camaraderie between the different groups and yourself, and just we could already see how well you worked with the bands even before you walked in. So that's really awesome to see.
Whoever said that, thank you.
Hey, there's a long list.
Yeah.
You're talking about making your mark. You certainly have.
Yes.
Whole that was like inspirational to hear that. I'm like, Jay, you should be a motivational speaker.
Specifically
I'm like,
for,
all right,
for punks.
it's time to get the work.
Yeah, no, it's with anything in this, whether you are an interviewer or you're somebody who does, artwork or you're the musician themselves, like, it takes a bit of self-starting and it takes some motivation, and sometimes it's hard to find it because there's a lot of people trying to do the same thing. So there's a little bit of something inside of you that you just kind of open up and you keep feeding it, and that's what those early years were about. It was just like, okay, I'm allowed in here, okay, and then they're letting me.
Now I can be here all the time.
Yeah, I can be here. They gave me a key, and it was just kind of like appreciating the opportunity in the moment, and but that holds true for everybody, like in your programs here at the school too. Like, take advantage of that stuff because that's the stuff that will get you ready for when those opportunities do come up, and an artist comes in that you've been waiting to work with, and you're ready to go because you were not sleeping, but you were in the studio or working on your craft as much as you possibly could, and now you're ready.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time for me to mention some of these bands you have worked with.
Okay.
We got a big list here. Let's just run some numbers quick. Taking Back Sunday, The Goo Goo Dolls, Terror, Mind Force, Every Time I Die, James Taylor, Super American, Head North, Pentimento, Del Paxton, The Traditional, Pilot Field, Gas Station. The list goes on forever.
Stacked.
Yeah.
Many, many more local bands, some other bigger names thrown in there as well.
Yeah.
But for any aspiring producers, people looking to get into the music industry, what do you think is one of the number one ways for making connections, and what is that process like for you?
I think the best way to make connections is just be a part of the community. And, if you are recording bands and you reach out to somebody and it's like a cold call, whether it's like an actual call or a text or it's a message on social media, it's pretty different if they've actually met you at one of their shows and you had a conversation or even just a quick hello. And, you're making some sort of connection. You're supporting them. You're supporting the community. That is like the biggest thing. Like to this day, I go to shows all the time. Like I was at one last night and the night before, and I'll be at one Saturday night. Yeah. And sometimes it's people who I work with. Other times it's just bands I'm a fan of. Other times it's like a band that somebody sent me and said, hey, like, I think you would do well with this band. And I'll go check them out and see what's up. But like just supporting the community and actually being a part of it is so huge. And because you want the same thing in return. You want somebody to support you. And like, it's not easy. Like when you are an artist and you're trying to make it happen, studio time isn't cheap. So I appreciate like what people are willing to sacrifice to come work. Like, and I really mean
it's
that
an honor.
at the bottom of my heart. Like, I appreciate when people are like, they believe enough in me in the studio and the process to actually invest in that and invest in themselves. So I definitely don't take it for granted. So I'm more than happy to be part of the community and, and just support each other. So that's the best way I think to make a connection.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that could apply for more than just, the Buffalo scene. It's any scene that's around,
Yeah. And that's, being touring artists too, you're hoping that people come to your shows.
Exactly.
So if there's a way for you to support artists from other scenes, it's easier than it's ever been. Like, share something. There you go. That's free.
Yep.
It, send it to somebody else if you liked it. There's so many ways to support now. But that would be the best way, I think, to do it, whether you're on, like, in my seat or if you're the artist or if you're making art, whatever it is, that's the best way to do it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, going back a little bit more to that list as well as the many others, was there any one particular experience that you were super excited or happy to have had, or an artist that you, like, checked off your bucket list?
Yeah. There's, like, been a lot of really great moments like that, but, like, the one where I was actually kind of, like, floored by the situation was working with James Taylor.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of reasons. Like number one, when I was growing up, like, my mom would, like, listen to James Taylor. My aunt who babysat me would listen to James Taylor. And when we got that phone call, actually Justin Rose, who works here, him and I did that session together.
Okay.
And at first it was kind of like, wait, what is happening here? James Taylor? And his producer is like, yeah, James Taylor.
So was that a connection through GCR?
Yeah, so that was
Specific?
they were working on a record, and then he had to leave for like a full U.S. tour. And what they were doing is like every few weeks on an off date, they would either book a studio or sometimes the producer would set up shop in a couple hotel rooms, and they were just cutting vocals and overdubs. And I think they just got to the point where they actually had to track drums and a lot more than just vocals. So he ended up calling us a few weeks in advance and said, "Hey, could you make some time for James Taylor?" We're like, "Sure." And it was just such a shock to have like that name show up on our calendar. It was kind of crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but I remember we spent like a couple days before just like really cleaning the place and like prepping it, and like they had told us we're going to be doing everything from drums to a ton of vocals and maybe even some violin overdubs and things like that. So I think Justin and I stayed up until like 2 the night before. We tuned every drum in the building. And the next day he walks in and he had Steve Gadd, who's a legendary drummer, with him. And we didn't even know he was coming to the session. And everybody started showing up. So that was
1-2 punch.
Yeah, it was the 1-2 punch for real. And they couldn't have been nicer. And
That's
this
awesome.
is why this is the story I wanted to share, is because it was really eye-opening that these musicians and artists have like really made it, and offering to make us lunch, and like knowing our names right away, which is like that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
And asking for photos of the place and the history, and like it was really surreal. But
Yeah,
like
that's
they
awesome.
are to their core just really great people, and he surrounds himself with people like himself. And so I didn't really, I couldn't say a single bad thing about that day. And we ended up tracking a few songs that are on that record. So Justin and myself both have credits, and so does the studio. So yeah, that's definitely one.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really cool
Really
to
special.
hear that you not only got that experience, but that also something came out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you can say that. You worked on that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's like the other thing too, is like the parents. That's the thing they look at. Like, oh, our kids' names are in a James Taylor album. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some
so it's important to the
generational
family
talent
too.
there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, throughout working with all these different artists of varying levels and different genres and such, I'm wondering, is there any specific rules or things that you have in place for either yourself or artists that is the same no matter what?
Not so much a rule, but definitely there's definitely some loose guidelines. I really want people to come in prepared. I also want to be prepared.
Yep.
Right.
I spent a lot of years, you just kind of, somebody walks in the door and you're up and recording, you have no idea what's going to happen, and you're just kind of winging it as you go. And in my experience, preparation is like, it's so key to making a great record now, because everybody has the ability to record some way or another. Even if you're just throwing your
This is
floor,
true.
your phone on the floor,
Yep.
playing into it, and you're sending me that voice memo. That helps me, it helps them. So not like a rule, but it's definitely something I take very seriously. And, there still are times where it's like, hey, our plan fell through, but we still want to come in and do something, and that's great too. But, I definitely try to push the demoing and the prepping and getting me in the loop kind of early on, so I could also prepare.
Yeah.
Right.
And when somebody comes in with maybe a little bit less, let's say, they don't have their lyrics fleshed out
Sure.
yet or whatever, what is your method for approaching that?
Just had that last week. And it's fine because we were making great progress. And it was kind of like we needed the verses for a song. We had the choruses, we needed the verses. So we just looped them, and the artist had some just kind of loose ideas and texted them over to me. And what's the song telling you? Like, what the vibe of the chorus is like? What do the verses need to tell you? And here's this list of lyrics that are in the song already, and what can we build? So just patience. It just is being patient with the artist and realizing, like, hey, if I knock them down, not everybody can get back up from that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're already deflated, like, oh, I didn't get my job done, and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
You don't want to make it any worse.
Got to be sensitive.
Yeah. So you got to go in with some patience and sensitivity. And if they want your help, just be willing to help. Sometimes they're just like, hey, give me a half an hour, and I'll go have a cup of coffee and hang out for a little bit, and they knock it out. Other times they really want you to jump in and say, that's good, that's bad, say this, don't say that. And next thing you know, you have your verse.
Yeah.
Then it happens a lot. And there's also like the random inspiration that happens in the studio.
Yes, I've heard about that a lot.
Yeah, you're cooking and all of a sudden it's like, aha, got an idea.
Yeah.
Let's see how it sounds. Okay, that is better. Let's keep it. Or no, keep what we had originally. So yeah, that happens a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was just going to say, more often than not, do you feel that you often end up giving that advice, or is it like truly different for every artist?
It is different from every artist, but like I do jump in a lot with like it could be harmonies or writing some extra guitar parts, helping with the drum pattern, even like basic stuff like, hey, I think the song needs tambourine or something like that. Or sometimes it's a pretty massive undertaking, like, hey, the structure is a little too much.
Yeah, that's
It's a
what I
pop
want
punk
to
song
ask you
and
about.
it's 6 minutes long. Like, what are we doing here?
When
Yeah.
there's something where it's like you really want to change things up, how do you approach that and not, overstep your boundaries? How do you balance that?
I
you
ask.
want your way of how it's going to be, and they might want theirs.
Yeah, I always ask. I said, hey, are you okay if I throw some notes at you? And pretty much everybody's like, yeah, what do you hear? And as long as you're not just kind of talking just to talk, as long as you actually have something to say, people are at least receptive to hearing you out. And again, just with digital audio, it's kind of easy to chop stuff up now, even just as like a rough cut, and turn it into something like, hey, I think that bridge should be half, the final chorus should be doubled. You need to write a pre-chorus, and you kind of chop something up, put it together, and you at least have something to show them. So if you want to go down that road, there's a little bit of a map, and then you can start getting their input if they're into it. And if they're into it, which is the best case scenario, you kind of work on it together, and you hopefully just made the song better. But yeah, sometimes people, are just fine with how it is, and they don't need me telling them how I think it should be, and it's just like, hey, capture what I wrote, let's make it sound good, and that's my record, my song.
Yeah. Those definitely sound like good methods for keeping everybody on the same page. So
Yeah, it's important to keep them on the same page.
Yeah. And it also really shows the collaboration between the artist and getting it done behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, definitely, and that's got to work, and there's the occasional uncomfortable session where it's just like vibes aren't clicking sometimes, and you work through it, and you still got to do a good job. And then there's the ones where you're calling them on the weekends to hang out and go hit a bar together or something,
Right.
and everything in between too. So
yeah. I mean, with some people, I feel like you've probably worked with them a lot over the years, whether they're, changing local bands over time. Is it something that's helpful to you when you're like, oh, I've worked with this guy in his previous band. I know kind of what it's like to work with him.
Yeah, definitely.
Or-
Yeah, when you have, musicians that are coming in multiple times, you learn something each time. Last time they weren't into taking notes, so I need to come up with a new approach if I want to throw something out there. Or, hey, they really asked me for a lot of advice last time. Maybe I should get the demos as early as I possibly can.
Okay, yeah.
And start throwing them ideas like way before we come in so they could practice them. But even like little things, like there's people who come in and they like can't wait to plug into the amp that I plugged them into last time, or like, there's a snare drum that they love that I have, and there's like that connection that happens, and it makes the next time like a little bit more enjoyable because they're they kind of figured it out a little bit last time, and now they just want to come in and use that experience and have even more fun this time.
Right. More out of curiosity, do you often see that if you have one band that has a shared member with another band that you're recording with, do you often see a dynamic switch between like the different bands and
That's a
that
good
member
question.
in there?
Yeah, it's a great question because there's a few people who are in like
Every
even
band.
like 5 bands.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of crossover these days. But yeah, I guess it just depends on who else is in the band and what their personalities are like. Sometimes they're kind of playing into the style a little bit. If it's something a little bit more serious, and there's a little less joke telling and free time, and or if it's just one of those things that's supposed to be fun, you just kind of lead the session into a direction where you're actually having fun in the session, in hopes that it translates through the music. So, yeah, even if it's like one person's playing in a hardcore band and they're playing in a pop punk band. It's still the same person, but like,
Right.
What's the goal and what's the vibe like? And for the most part, people are like really good with like reading that because they're at practice together and they're hanging out together. And I just kind of take a few minutes to say like, okay, what's the vibe like today? And I just go off of that.
Nice. That's very interesting. Yeah. Well, I wanted to switch it over. It has been known that you have a lot of different equipment, vintage and new. Do you have a specific piece of equipment that you really like to record with? And how did you discover some of the products that you use today?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of equipment in that building. So
I could imagine.
The list is quite long. But, in our main studio, Studio A, we have a SSL console and a little Neve sidecar and a lot of Chandler equipment. And, I mean, really, that whole chain, like the preamps and stuff in the Chandlers and the Neve are a huge part of like my sound, I guess. And even like not exactly a piece of equipment, but the live room in Studio A is just a beautiful live room. So that's a huge part of why things sound the way they do. And maybe like my most appreciated part of that building is that live room. But the equipment itself, yeah, just great consoles in the studio. Even like down in Studio C where I do a lot of my overdubs, I have a Trident console and just a lot of things that give me the vibe of, I do like a lot of rock music, so the vibes for the tones that I'm looking to get. So yeah, the consoles we have would be probably my thing I appreciate as far as the gear, maybe the most.
Yeah, I've never been, but I've seen a lot of pictures, and it always looks so nice in there, just in general. And I do see a lot of the equipment that
there's a lot of gear.
Mentioning.
Yeah, no, it's a great spot. It really is, and you're more than welcome to come down, both of you, if you ever, all three of you, if you want to come down and
Well, thanks.
do a walkthrough or something. So always something going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another piece of equipment, you were talking about, somebody might come in and they want to use a specific snare or something. You recorded Low Teens by Every Time I Die. And I think I saw somebody post that, like, the snare that was used on that album you still use today.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did that record with Will Putney, who's the producer and head engineer on that record. And we recorded that in 2016 at GCR in Studio A and Studio C. And, the snare, it's a Gretsch bell brass snare. And I had owned it for a couple years before we did that record.
Gotcha.
And the way that Will likes to work is like, okay, bring in like your 10 favorite snares and we tune them up. And there's a lot of time spent getting them to sound right. And you record a little bit with each one. And that one just kind of kept jumping out as like, it just sounded massive. And the way that the drummer was hitting it, it fit the style so well. Because it's,
awesome.
a really powerful band.
Right.
And you wanted everything kind of in the entire lineup to sound big. And that snare drum has just kind of ended up, like, if I had to put a number on it, it's probably on 500 plus songs at this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
It's the lucky snare.
the lucky snare.
Yeah, I felt like I had seen it posted by bands like more than once.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I gotta ask about this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
There's a story behind the snare drum.
There is, yeah. And people love it. It's just one of those things that, it's a little bit of a pricey snare, and so people aren't just going and buying one all the time, and they're not really mass produced either. But the fact that it was used on a couple Every Time I Die albums, people definitely like the history behind it. And
I'm sure.
But the list is like super long. Like there's been awesome drummers on that snare, and it was recently puked on.
I was gonna say, I was
story.
like, fingers crossed this thing doesn't get.
Yeah, it was recently puked on, so that's part of the tale. But. That's a standout piece for sure when it comes to instruments.
I'm curious about that puke story.
Yeah, so
good.
some of the members from Every Time I Die started a band called Better Lovers, and we had been working on their stuff, and then they were doing their holiday show last year, and their drummer Goose, great friend, I don't hold this against him, said, "Hey, can I borrow that snare for the shows?" I said, "Yeah, of course." And it was at the town ballroom, and when he was playing, I thought, like, did he spill water? Because he's hitting, and there's just water flying everywhere.
Oh, no.
And, like, immediately as soon as their set was done, I get a text from him. He's like, "I am so sorry." was like, what's going on? I was like, you spilled water? He's like, no, that was puke. I was like, what is going on here? He's like, dude, it was the whole night, and it was nerves, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to scrub it, put new heads on it for you. I'm like, oh, jeez.
Did he end up doing that?
He did. He still, because they had 2 shows, they had one the next day. He's like, I still use it tomorrow. I was like, yeah, of course.
Man, everybody loves this snare.
But yeah, he took care of it, cleaned it up, and put some new heads on it, and it was just another part of the history of this snare drum, and the puking of 2023 survived.
I bled on a drum set, and that's nothing now. I'm like,
that's barely a story
dude,
compared to
that's
that.
so
You marked your
scary.
territory. That's what you did.
Like thinking about the. Oh my god.
Yeah. I feel
Sebastian's a drummer.
I like this isn't a good time to say I don't like vomiting.
Yeah, I was like, once Sebastian went with that, I was like, oh god, this is not gonna be good for
That's
Elena.
all right.
Sorry, I was just.
At least it's
For
not
the-
in front of
for
me.
the
It's
lowdown.
fine.
We
It's
did
fine.
it.
Yeah.
We did it for the lowdown.
But I'm also just imagining when you said brass, I'm just imagining like a golden plated like snare. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you meant when you said I don't know too much about snares, but
Yeah, it's a bell brass snare, so it has like
Mostly
it's
metal.
a brass looking finish on it, and
that's probably beautiful.
We got to get a picture of it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, there actually I think I might even have one on Instagram, or I could send you one. But yeah, it's a legendary snare for a lot of reasons.
love it.
Yeah.
All right, bringing it into 2 recent releases that you were involved with. Coincidentally, Carpool and Spaced both released their albums on March 22nd that you
day. Yeah,
produced. What was that like, and what was it like for both of these big projects to come out at the same time?
It was funny because I might have been like the only one who knew they were going to come out in the same day. Because
Really?
like,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's different labels and different camps, you know.
Yeah.
And when I got word that was going to happen, I was like, wait a second, hold on. That date sounds familiar. And Space is like, yeah, we're releasing that day. And then, wait, hold on, Carpool's releasing that day too. So it was just, I got a kick out of it when that happened. It was just like it was a good day for Western New York.
Yes.
I love both those bands.
awesome.
I love the people to death in them. Had a fantastic time working on both records. And I was just really like happy and proud that they asked me to be a part of them. And, you know, for both bands, it's a pretty big moment. Like Space's record came out in Revelation, which is a
Yes.
legendary hardcore label.
Yeah.
And Carpool came out on Side One Dummy.
Yeah, it was
Which
kind of
is-
like, it was almost like similar, like Ascent they
Yeah.
were taking that day.
And that was like to me, probably the coolest part of all of it. It was just kind of like both of these groups are taking, like, in my opinion, a huge step today.
Absolutely.
And it's turned into like a situation where they're both doing really great tours and internationally. And
I was just about to say, Space just went on, I believe, a UK tour. Or
yeah,
just,
UK tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Carpool's been just doing the US lately. And they got working. So,
and they have a bunch coming up too.
oh, yeah.
Multiple tours.
Bands that
Yeah.
want to play with.
Right.
Exactly where they want to get their traction, I feel. So.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, no, that was a very cool day to have that come out, and like I said, just super happy to be part of both records, and 2 just different areas of a similar spectrum, you know, but great time. We used to, going back to like the equipment talk, we used some really cool gear on both records, and it's funny. Joe from Space just texted me the other day that he's like going to buy one of the amps that we used on the record, and so it's like a proud moment for me, being like, oh, okay, yes. You're graduating onto like the next amp level. I love it. But yeah, no, stoked for both those bands. Amazing people and amazing bands.
Yeah.
I will say, when the announcement came out that they were on the same day, Elena and I, we had our calendars marked. We were like,
Yeah.
Spaced and Carpool that day.
And I was like,
Call off the rest of the day.
yeah, and I was like, we're totally gonna have a listening party, and then we
then we did.
realized that we had a show that same night.
Yeah,
So we were in
that's true.
BJ's running the show, and I just load up my phone, and I just like from across the room just show the albums
I'm
are out.
like, yep. I know. I'll get to
Yeah.
it once I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be more
they're
listening
fantastic.
parties, by the way.
Yeah.
Spaced actually had one. It was like, it was at Overwinter. It was just like a very low key There
Nice.
should be more listening parties at places.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think too on like this just because I'm a college student, but I think campuses would be an awesome place to have a
Oh,
listening
most
party.
definitely. Yeah.
Yes,
Be super cool.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one specific question about the Carpool one, because they used to play here all the time. their set lists would be out, and they had this one on their set list for the longest time that would always just be ETID.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
that became Car.
Car, yeah.
So it was kind of
Gotcha.
like their version of it every time I
Yeah.
Die song. Was that like an interesting thing for you because you had worked with
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Time
So
I Die?
Stoff had told me that was going to happen,
Yeah.
and they're just kind of like, you know, we love ETID, and
Yeah.
you know, he drew strong influences on the vocal style for that particular song from ETID,
Right.
and yeah, when we were like dialing in tones, they're like, okay, well, what would you do if you had ETID here? And like, and so we end up using some of the stuff that we would use on Every Time I Die records, and
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, and when I was
Oh.
mixing it, I was just kind of like, okay, they weren't kidding. There's you know some ETID type riffs in here, and
Yep.
what can we do to make it feel a little bit more correct? And you know that song definitely stands out as by far the most aggressive song on the Carpool
Yeah,
record.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great
Yes.
track though.
And the
Like,
video's amazing too.
yeah.
Yes.
They used to play it
absolutely.
here at BJ's, and people love it. It'd be like such a contrast from what they were doing the song before.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a banger.
Yeah, I missed the last carpool show that happened in Fredonia. I missed it by 2 shows.
Oh,
Just as I got into the music scene. But yeah, I would say that's definitely like one of the top tracks on the album for me too.
Yeah,
it hits.
great stuff.
It hits.
Yeah. Well, going more into the end of the recording process, you had some really cool pennants made by Oxford Pennant, and it says,
Yep.
I recorded with Jay Zubricky, and now he's my best friend. What was the idea behind creating those, and what has it been like handing them out to different bands and artists at the end of recording?
Without sounding like cheesy or anything, I wanted to do something nice for the people who come and record with me because, like, first of all, I really appreciate it, and like,
Yeah.
I want to just kind of give them something to kind of go away with that if they want to reflect on the time, you know, pin something up, and they're only like this big, so it's not too bad. And so my friend Brett Michael is one of the owners of Oxford Pennant, and he's been in some awesome bands like back in the day. So he kind of like understood like what I wanted to do with it, and we started talking about this design. And in Studio C at GCR, I got lava lamps kind of everywhere, and I've had this like silhouette face logo for like 12 years or something. And we're like, what can we do that we just give to somebody that's kind of like a little funny? And then I was like struggling with what to put on it. And I was recording a band called The Eves. They've played at BJ's a few times, but
I've heard of them. Yeah.
awesome band. And I had like a narrowed down, and the bass player Mo was just like, dude, why don't you just have something about like becoming your best friend, because like we love you. And I was like, so right then and there we kind of like figured it out, and I sent it over, and then a few weeks later I got the first batch, but I think I've already passed out well over 200.
Oh wow, you got
Wow.
a lot of them made.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I give them in batches of like 80, I think. So I do different color scheme each time.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so right now it started with Sabres, now it's on Colorado Avalanche. We're doing a lot of hockey stuff, but yeah. So just it's something that I thought was cool to do, and if I was in their shoes, it might be kind of cool to leave with a little token
Oh,
of
absolutely.
appreciation. So
Yeah. Wearing the Oxford Pennant. hat.
yeah, rocking it. Yeah,
It's real deal.
Showing the support.
showing the support.
Yeah. Well, another unique opportunity that you've had. You worked with Stefan Diggs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ex-Bills player. I'm remiss to say this.
Ex
but
Bills now.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Just, different than what you've done normally. So,
Yeah, it was super random, and it's not like a big project or anything, but
Just
it
a little
was
ad.
the voiceovers for the M&T Bank commercials. But so we have an engineer at the studio, Mike Bridges, and he does a lot of voiceover work. And Diggs was coming in, and it's kind of like, hey, let's get a couple people on this. So Mike and I worked that session together, and at the time, like he was in the good graces of the fan base at the time, and so everybody it was a pretty big deal that he was coming in, and he was really friendly. I mean, very professional and right to the point of just kind of going in to do his thing, and he ended up signing autographs for everybody, and there's like a dentist office next door, and the employees came out, and they're like, "Are you Stefan Diggs?" He's like, "Yeah." And then they all came out with their phones. He took pictures with everybody. So he was friendly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just voiceover work.
It was
and
just a quick little
yeah.
thing.
But Mike and I were able to snap a photo with him on his way
Saw
out.
that.
And it's just not something you do every day. Not like just another band. It's an NFL star.
Yeah.
So
Switches it up a little bit.
yeah, a little
you
bit.
could say.
A little bit.
Yeah. And I guess I kind of just wanted to ask like one overarching question about your experience working in the studio in general. What is your favorite part of the process?
Like the recording process, or just like studio life, or
Any way you want to take it, really.
I just love being in the environment and like the experiences you get each day, because it changes each day. Before I came here, I was mixing like a shoegaze style band.
Cool.
And a couple days ago, I was tracking some like alternative rock, and then I was doing a hardcore record before that. So just the kind of like ever-changing environment and the people you meet. And one of my favorite things to do, and whether it's wasting time or not, is just kind of getting a cup of coffee in the kitchen there and just talking to whoever's around. The other day I had a rock band in with me in Studio C. There was a hip-hop session in Studio B, and there was a jazz band in Studio A.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And there was like a moment where we all kind of hit the kitchen, and everybody's like getting coffee and like making espresso and stuff. And
You all made a song together right there.
Yes.
close. The singer of the band I was working with went up and sang background vocals on one of the
look at
jazz
that.
Oh,
songs.
really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was I don't know, I just like kind of seeing it all come together like that. So the communal vibe and just kind of, like I said, the ever-changing experience day to day. And yeah, you never know who you're going to meet. You know, sometimes it's like James Taylors of the world, and other
Right.
times it's just somebody who's going to become your best friend. So
Yep.
yeah,
And
there's
then
a
you'll
pennant
give them
that
a
says
pennant.
that. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We both knew that one was coming.
Yes, we did.
Yep.
Well,
All right. Time to bring in our
your
salmon-haired.
technical director.
Welcome on.
For our special weekly question. Yeah, Jay, I love the internet. I don't know about you, but I was just curious, out of all the things you've ever seen ever, maybe on YouTube,
Never seen ever.
what stands out to you? What video is in your noggin when you're recording, when you're sleeping, when you're making the espresso, when you're doing
When you're working with
everything?
James
Yes.
Taylor. You're trying to focus, but
You can only think of this video.
I don't know if there's like a video, but something I've been doing lately, and it's actually, this is kind of my salmon-haired friend. This is kind of like, it's coming from YouTube, but it's like kind of not a video. Is like lately I've been going down these like rabbit holes of like 3 scariest camping stories to ever
Oh, really?
exist.
Oh.
And
Like top 10 like freakiest horror, or like I think
like Ring doorbell camera catches
Oh my
10
God.
scary people.
I have a
like,
friend from
Oh,
home who
could not be
loves
me.
that.
so
Could
I
not
just
be me.
So like my thing is like I stare at screens all day long.
Yeah.
So like
Right.
when I get home and I'm just like looking to do something, sometimes I'll like throw it's on YouTube, so hopefully this works for you. It's on YouTube, so I'll throw in like one of those playlists and just like listen to these like stories. It's like just like listen to a podcast. Like
yeah.
so I don't know if that
That's,
breaks the rules.
no.
It is coming from YouTube.
Anything's fair game. for
Okay,
this
so I've been
question.
doing that lately. So I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's like just lately I've been doing that just to kind of not stare anymore.
Yeah. I love to hear that that's how
Yeah.
you're like giving your ears a break from music. You're like, let's just horrify.
Ring doorbell camera stories.
You know, usually when a group or an artist will give me the recommendations, I'll usually take them up on it and actually
Yeah.
watch it. I can't promise you all this one.
I don't blame you. I don't even know if I like it. It's just something I've been doing lately. So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, awesome.
Is there like words for the audio? Well, I'm curious to see what the visual is. They just have like a scary face on it.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I don't always like watch it. So sometimes it's just kind of like playing off my phone or my computer. But like the ones that I've seen, yeah, there's typically like this stupid photos of like you can tell they're just typing in like scary person by a house.
Yeah. No,
And
I know
it's just like, what are you doing here? But I'll listen to the stories though.
okay.
Nice.
Well, we'll let the people see.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, last question for the night.
Okay.
Are there any projects that you're currently working on that you'd like to talk about, or any releases coming out soon, or just any news in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's always great stuff coming out. You know, I've been super fortunate to be busy just for a long time, so there's always good stuff coming out. Wrapping up a project with a band called Deluxe right now.
Oh,
Great. We
awesome.
had them on this
yeah.
special.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
First episode.
Nice. So wrapping up some stuff with them. That's what I was mixing before I came here. So that's going to be coming out kind of soonish. Violent Way is dropping an EP
Nice.
at the end of the month. The single just came out
Similar
a couple
group
days
of
ago.
guys.
Yes.
Yeah, similar group of guys. Working on a record right now with a band called Letter to Elise.
Oh, yes. I've heard of them.
And it's like great like pop rock. But I'm pretty excited about that one too. So they'll be dropping that, I think, by the end of May.
Gotcha.
So that's relatively
Awesome.
soon. So yeah, that's some stuff I've been kind of working on lately, and keeping the ear to the ground for that.
Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. But that also concludes this episode of the Local Lowdown. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks
We
for
really
having me.
appreciated having you on this week.
Yeah. And thank you for listening to the Local Lowdown on 88.9 WCVF The Voice and 89.5 WDVL The Inferno. We'll be back next week with some more scary local music. Same time.
Same place.
Bye.
Bye.